I waited behind to talk to my epi professor, rehearsing in my mind how I was going to explain myself. I just couldn't go on like this any longer. The embarrassment from falling asleep and dozing through all of my classes, the strange stares from classmates who probably assumed I was a lazy student, but we just didn't have any lazy students in my public health program. I was frustrated, anxious, nervous I would fail because I was missing so much information, but most of all, I was completely exhausted. So many thoughts and questions raced through my mind. Would I have to drop out of my program? You see, I was diagnosed with narcolepsy the year before, but I had lived with the condition for 10 years prior to the actual diagnosis. Narcolepsy is a rare condition only affecting less than 1% of the United States population. So why did I have to be included in the 1% club? It is a chronic sleep disorder resulting from a disrupted sleep pattern and characterized by excessive daytime sleepiness. I call them sleep attacks because my time is constantly being hijacked by the constant need to sleep at inappropriate times. This made me avoid people and social engagements. I wanted to participate, but I didn't want anyone to discover my secret. Some people made assumptions that I was lazy or just not a serious person, even though I worked twice as hard, but with very little outward progress. I just wanted to be normal like everyone else. So I put a lot of time and effort into appearing normal, but the truth is that I was struggling to accomplish simple daily functions because my condition makes simple tasks like reading, cooking, driving, even watching TV sometimes impossible. Narcolepsy had completely disrupted my life. On the open canvas of life, we will sometimes face disruptions. For some, it could be the loss of a job. For others, it could be dealing with a bully or even divorce. The list could go on. So how do we thrive? How do we move forward during those seasons in life where things just don't go as according to plan? Although narcolepsy tried to disrupt my life, I learned how to disrupt narcolepsy and how we can do the same with the disruptors in our lives. The first lesson I learned was about the power of our thoughts. After a minor car accident resulting from falling asleep behind the wheel, I had to stop driving for a period of 5 years. During this period, I reflected through journaling, reading, and asking lots of questions. Although I didn't recognize it at the time, I was engaging in mindfulness. With the diagnosis came many life changes: divorce, unemployment, moving back into my parents' home with my 3 children, and inability to operate a motor vehicle. There was also a period when I was gripped with an overwhelming sense of fear. To overcome this, I would do what I call walking meditation, where I would pace back and forth while taking deep breaths and repeating an affirmation to myself, such as, God has not given me a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. One night I decided to stay awake and engage in this walking meditation. And the following day, I noticed that 90% of the fear had left me. It felt like a burden had been lifted, and I could feel a tangible difference in my mind and in my body. The result was so real and powerful, so I knew I was onto something. We often dismiss or are completely oblivious to the impact our thoughts have on our lives. Our minds can be likened to a computer, with our conscious mind being like the software and our subconscious mind like the hardware. If we want to change the program, output or the effect. We need to replace the software. What I mean by this is that we would need to install a new operating system in our minds by changing our thought patterns. I continue to engage in these walking meditations to this day. This isn't just something that can be used to overcome the effects of narcolepsy, but something that we could all incorporate into our lives. At one point, I decided to drop out of my master's program. It was during spring break, but seriously, I had no intention of going back to school because I felt like I had given it my best shot, and I just didn't know how I would be able to complete all of the coursework in time. So after binging on Days of Our Lives, General Hospital, and lots of popcorn, I went to speak with my epidemiology professor, and she decided to give me an incomplete for that semester, allowing me to complete the coursework over the summer. She encouraged me, and I returned to school with a totally new mindset, and eventually I graduated. What if we were to redirect our minds instead of focusing on negative self-limiting thought, but we were to redirect our minds away from the situation that we are facing? Affirmations and meditation are not just some new age idea as I once thought, but they can actually be life-changing. This brings me to the second thing that narcolepsy taught me, and that is the secret of how to fail. Now, I'm not an expert at too many things, but one craft that I have mastered is failing, because I failed so many times at so many different things. During the period that I couldn't drive, I sent out hundreds of applications for work in and out of my field, and I received one rejection letter after another. But what actually constitutes failure? From one angle, it appears to be what we get when we don't pass or make the grade. This is what we are taught. Therefore, it's no surprise that the average person tries to avoid it at all costs. But the problem with this point of view is that it doesn't consider that failure is not one-dimensional. It is a kaleidoscope that can change depending on which angle we choose to place our focus. On one hand, it can be viewed as the opposite of success, but on the other hand, it can be viewed as the gathering of information. When we compile the data, it reveals information about what the results that we do not want, so that we can make adjustments or modifications until we reach the desired end result. This is a secret that is known very well by entrepreneurs and scientists, and you may know one of them. His name is Thomas Edison. When asked how he could fail so many times and not give up, I love his response. He said, "I have not failed 10,000 times. I have successfully found 10,000 ways that will not work." His point of view of failure is that it's a process that we must go through until we achieve the result that we are seeking. Statistics will demonstrate that the more attempts one makes, the higher the likelihood of failure or missing the mark. Therefore, it can be assumed that if we're not failing often, we're likely not making too many attempts or trying new things. We're likely not making too many attempts or trying new things. Some people will never start a venture because of the fear of failure. It can actually be a hindrance to getting started. But I believe a lot of the fear and hesitation could be removed if we change the way that we look at failure. Now, the third lesson that I learned from narcolepsy is how to embrace brokenness, and that it's okay to not be okay. It's okay if everything isn't exactly perfect or the way that we want it, as long as we don't allow ourselves to be complacent, but we're trying to improve, our situation. Trying to be perfect is mentally, physically, and emotionally draining. Trust me, I know. We should definitely aim for continuous self-improvement, But even a careful examination of the best at any craft will reveal a lack of perfection. I know it may sound counterintuitive, but the best way that I can describe it is in the words of a philosopher who once said that you must first be broken in order to be made whole. Brokenness can result from situations that are too big for us to handle on our own. Brokenness is, however, not a destination. It's not meant to be a place that we linger or stay, but rather one that we pass through. Not around, but through. It is an embracing this is who I am and exactly where I'm supposed to be, that we can realize that, that brokenness can actually be a pathway to rejuvenation. It is a painful process, so we try to avoid it no matter what the cost. We try to avoid or shut down our feelings, put up appearances on Facebook and Instagram, or cover up with jokes instead of facing the real issue at hand. However, if we would allow ourselves to be vulnerable or broken, we could experience the benefits thereof. After the breaking point, there's a period of rebuilding and renewing. We even observe this in nature when a seed is planted. It must first be broken before it can grow to produce the fruit, which produces the seeds, which continue the cycle. Brokenness is ironically a platform for regeneration. Narcolepsy has taught me that on the open canvas of life, we may face various challenges. It may be tinged with different shades of hopelessness, disappointment, shame, and failure. However, we have the power to add a new brushstroke. We can add colors to create the masterpiece that we want. With each new day, we are given an open canvas, and we can choose to use life's disruptions as life's direction. So, what picture are you going to paint today? Thank you.